Hey everyone, and welcome to this special live broadcast from Tom's Hardware. We're going to do a live unboxing of the new Nvidia RTX 3080 card. We're here with senior editor Jared Walton, who has the RTX 3080 card. He can unbox it, he can show it, but there's limits to what we can talk about. Although we're happy to take your questions, we're not allowed to answer all of them. Uh,
Yeah, it's kind of a funny situation, right? Because we've got the card. Nvidia has already released a ton of information. We can talk about the public Nvidia information. We just can't talk about any internal testing or whatever, which gets into a weird place because it's like, well, we can neither confirm nor deny their benchmarks or whatever, but you can go and look at our Ampere architecture deep dive. You can look at what I've written on the RTX 3080, RTX 3090, RTX 3070. We know all the specs. This is just going to be more looking at the card itself. And, I haven't done cooling tests. I haven't done power tests that I can talk about. So it's just going to be talking about the card. But if you've got general questions that relate to like Ampere architecture or whatnot, we can certainly get into those.
all right, so let's take a look at the box.
All right, I'm going to just angle this down. You're going to lose me. Do. Ah, there she is. How's that look?
Beautiful.
A thing of beauty is a joy forever. All right, I'm going to open it up. And I've done this before, of course, because I had to make sure I knew what was in there. But there's your card. Oh man, that like fresh foam smell, brand new. I don't know. It's probably carcinogenic, but it definitely it's like the new car smell of graphics cards.
Yeah, I wish they made an air freshener like that I could just put all over my room.
I'd probably start disliking it if they did. So you got the card here. Different box than in the past. Like the 20 series and before, they had like the vertical mounted card. I think this looks a lot nicer having it lay flat like that. Probably more secure, and it's easier to put back in the box. We'll pull that out, and you can see it's got the little cover on there. We'll set this down here for a second and just quickly look at the other stuff. There is not a whole lot in here. So this is your card support guide, and underneath this it's a warning card telling you about the dual PCIe to 8-pin 8-pin to 12-pin adapter, which let's pull that out. And this is your adapter cable, which I guess the whole point of the adapter cable is that they did it to save on kind of size or space. It's a weird thing in that sense because you can't draw more power through two 8-pin connectors without going over spec than the 300 watts. So why do we have the 8-pin to 12-pin? And they said it was to cut down on board size. So I think the board ends like right in this area. So this is all just empty space. And so you get the 12-pin connector. I wrote this in our unboxing, but because every card that needs a 12-pin connector comes with an adapter, there's this concern like, hey, this little insert is supposed to be only rated for 25 cycles according to the specs, not from Nvidia, but from the 12-pin standard definition. I don't know what you call it, but if you're worried about 25 cycles not being enough, you can just leave this permanently plugged in because every card that needs it has it. And I don't think anyone swaps graphics cards nearly as much as a GPU reviewer. Let's look at the rest of the card. So you got the main card, nothing super fancy there, except that we've just got the one fan that's visible here. And then on the back side, you've got the other fan. And so this fan on this side blows through. Then this fan is like a blower. It will shoot your air out the side. In terms of ports, we got 3 DisplayPort and 1 HDMI. The HDMI is 2.1 capable, which means you get like up to 8K 60 hertz, 120 hertz with DSC, the digital stream compression, I think. The DisplayPort are still 1.4A, which is the same as the prior 2 generations, I believe, of NVIDIA cards. And you can see, like, because there's not a 5th port, they had a virtual link port on the last generation, but they've really opened up the venting here to allow a lot of airflow to come out that way. So I'm very curious to see how it does in terms of temperatures. It's hard to see here, like, exactly how the venting goes through, but this one just blows straight through. I think the idea of this is kind of like a radial fan, that it will blow air through and come out these vents, but I'm not sure. One thing I do want to say is, like, these ridges, these radiator fins are actually quite thick and sturdy. Like, when I first saw the leaked videos, I thought, oh man, that looks ugly. And are you going to get dented fins? Because I've got a lot of AIO coolers that I've used for CPUs, and the fins are often so thin that you bump them and they bend. And these fins are a little thicker. They're pretty sturdy feeling. These ones are very thick. Like, these aren't going anywhere. But
Jerry,
overall,
can you hold it up a little closer to the camera? I think it's a little hard for people to see the fins that are on the right side.
which right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Your left.
Wait.
Yeah, that side. Yeah, I think it's. Oh, now you can sort it. Now you can kind of see it. I think it's the light, because it's black and the light, it's a little dark.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's a super nice feeling card. I think it looks pretty slick. One of the things I'm curious to see is the back of the previous generation, the 20 series. It got super hot, those back plates, and so I'm hoping that these fan changes will make the back plate less of a scorcher. Like, if you ran a game for an hour or even 20 minutes, and then you powered off your computer immediately and grabbed the graphics card, like, it was hot enough to burn you. Hey, while we're talking about that, let's pull out the other cards. So we've got 3080 there. Previous gen 2080. You can see it is slightly shorter. And the 2080 Super, 2070 Super, and 2080 Ti are actually all the same basic size. You can see, like, there's no difference in size for the 2080 Ti. And then if I go even further back, I gotta stretch from my microphone for a minute. That's not a reference card. That's a 7080. Here we go. Let's see. That's a 1080, and we'll put the EVGA 7080 away, and that's the 980, and I can flip all of those over as well so you can see. But that's the back side. You can see the design basically didn't change hardly at all from the 980 to the 1080. You had the little removable thing for SLI on the 980. And some of these cards are a little dustier than others because they've been around for a long time. If you look at the fans here on the 980 and 1080, I don't know if they're the exact same size. I thought that this one was supposed to be a little bit bigger. Obviously, we did a major change with the 2080, the 20 series. We went to dual axial fans instead of the radial fans and the blowers, which I think it was, I don't know. I don't think it was a universal win. It wasn't a universal bad. Most of your third-party cards are open air coolers, and there are blower coolers available for 20 series. But like I said, the back plates on the 20 series got very hot, and I hope that changes a little on the 30 series. And of course, the 30 series, this is a 320 watt card. This was a 225 watt because it's the Founders Edition. And that light is really harsh out there. Anyway, that's your 4 generations of the 80 series that we've got. And I have tested all of these except the 2080. The 3080. So we'll be the reviews, or the launch is on the 17th, and we will go live with our review then. Do we got any questions that we want to field from the audience? Actually, I have something I want to talk about, which this is architecture stuff, which is kind of, it's interesting to me, and I think
Jared, the number one request from the audience is that see if we could get more light on the card, and maybe if we could turn the RGB off on the mouse pad, because that might be messing with the light a little bit.
I'm just gonna plug the there, no light. Yeah, my office is not equipped ideally for lighting. Let me try this. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's
I think that made it worse. I mean, you can see the ridges now a little better on the card for a minute there.
Trying to like no, that's just making it brighter. Okay. I can hold it up better to the light here. The reflection is a little bad from the. I wonder if I put a white piece of paper out, if that would help. What do you think? I can do that.
Give it a shot.
The black on white might help you see it better. How's that look?
Not better.
I mean, it's a webcam, so you know there's only so much you can do.
Not better, but now we can actually see the other fan inside. Is this the first? How many other cards have had that type of exhaust system?
As far as I know, this is the first. Because usually your PCB extends the full length of the card, and so here the PCB actually has like this V cutout here, and as far as I know, it ends like around this area, and then everything back here is just for cooling, and there's heat pipes that tie all this together. One of the interesting.
Something froze, I think. Jared, I think you froze. Is that right? I think it was so exciting. Is everybody seeing? Are other people seeing Jared? Because for me, he froze. But at least it froze on a picture of the card. Let me make sure Jared understands he froze. Well, that is. I think he's going to come back and on again. Nothing is perfect when you do it live, but we wanted to do it live for you, so you could see the card actually coming out of the box and experience the excitement. If we could make the new box smell come to you over streaming, we would. And I don't know how the rest of Jared's office smells, but if we could make the box smell come to you, we absolutely would. I'm sure he'll be back on in a minute. But obviously we're happy to take your questions about architecture, about older cards, how the build compares to older cards. We're curious, of course, for anyone who's in the chat and watching live, what do you think of the design? Do you have any thoughts about the design that you want to share? Hey, back.
Hey. My internet crashed. That's
how excited it was to show the box.
Like I can see my my router, my cable modem. It's got the blinking lights of death right now. So that was awesome. Hey, but I've got a handheld camera now. We are on my phone, and I can maybe. Oh, sorry. Let's see. How do I switch my camera view? Can't you switch the camera? I want to go to the other side. Oh, there we go. Front camera. Maybe this will help, though. Let's see. There's the rear camera. Can you see that now?
Yes, we can.
Is it better?
Yeah, I think better, though, if you did it in landscape mode. If you could do it in landscape. Oh, that's weird. Your whole thing is still showing in portrait, though.
Yeah. I think that's the iOS version of it. Curses.
Yes. Well, now you can really see the fins actually better than you could before. Yes. Yes. That's your pan right there.
So this is interesting too. Notice the fan has this it's got a little outside rim on it to help direct the airflow, I guess, into the GPU, improve the cooling. I would suspect. So that's normally the other fans that we've had on the previous generation cards don't have that rim around it, and that's on both fans too. So, like I said, I'm super curious to see how the cooling runs. One question I wanted to get into, I don't know if others had this question, but T-flops. Let's talk about compute for a second, Avram. And
yeah. So someone asks, what are the specs?
So there are 8,000. What is it? 8804. My internet went down, so I can't even read my specs off. It's terrible. It's 60. Hold on, 68 Cuda cores. Sorry, 68 SMs and 128 SMs. Or sorry, Cuda cores per SM. So it's no, that's wrong. What did I do? 68 times. There we go. It's 8704. Is that right? I think that's right.
Yes,
8704 shader cores. And the shader cores are different this round. Your previous generation shader cores, you had one CUDA core cluster, or you had 64 CUDA cores per SM cluster. That's a size shot for anyone who wants to.
So Brad asks, how does it compare? Will it fit in his MSI Trident X?
What's in the Trident X by default?
Good question. I think it depends which model you get. Brad, if you can tell us, it would make it easier for us to which card you have in your Trident X right now. It'd be easier to answer. I know we've reviewed a Trident X, but I don't have the spec in front of me of what the clearance is. Oh, he says 2080 Super is in there now.
Yeah, I would assume if you can fit a 2080 Super, especially if it's like an MSI model, this is probably going to be about the same in terms of size as a custom cooler. You can see here if I set them on top of each other, like it's just a little bit longer than the 2080 Founders Edition. So
What about the 2080 Ti?
2080 Ti is the same size as the 2080 for the Nvidia reference Founders Edition, right? So, you know, if I've got other 2080 Ti's, or I've seen other 2080 Ti's that are much larger, but for the reference design, Nvidia has gone slightly larger than their previous gen.
Jared, is there a thing called flip lock on your setting called flip lock on your phone?
Maybe, I don't know.
Why? Someone suggested that if you disable flip lock, that it will give you a full landscape view.
Oh,
because right now we're getting like big black bars on either side. At least it's right side up, but it's now it's not right side up. It was better before, but
so there's camera settings. Camera, it just has front and back camera. I think it's just because I'm on iOS and this StreamYard that we use isn't allowing us to.
Yes.
I'm going to try and unplug my internet router and plug that in. So give me 2 seconds. You're going to get a still camera for a second while I.
But just look at the teeth. The teeth on the PCI. I wish we could put it in a case and show it to you guys, but we're not allowed by Nvidia to show benchmarks right now, or to put it in a case, or to take it apart. But eventually on a future show, we will be able to do that, and we will be happy to do that.
Aha. Okay. The modem is going to restart. It was actually, my internet was down this morning. I unplugged the modem and plugged it back in, and it came back up, but then it just went down. So I don't know if Comcast is having problems in my area or if my modem is having problems, but hopefully it's not the modem. So let's talk Cuda Cores though. 8704 Cuda Cores is a big jump from the previous generation, right? That still doesn't sound like the right number. I'm probably thinking about something incorrectly. Check my facts here. I got my spreadsheet up. It is 8704. Okay, good. Oh, it's 5888 on the 3070. That's what I was remembering, all those eights. So here's the thing you have to know about the Cuda Cores is that the previous generation, 2080, for example, had 64 FP32 Cuda Cores and 64 INT Cuda Cores that could both run at the same time. So you had theoretically like 10 gigaflops of FP32 performance and 10 gigaflops, or sorry, 10 gigaops of INT performance available. With Ampere, they have an FP32 cluster that's only FP32. Then they have a second cluster that's FP32 or INT. So if you're doing INT and FP32 instructions at the same time, which most games would do a mix, it's going to be like, Nvidia says it's like 35% integer. But when you get that mix, you'll end up with the FP32 INT core is going to use about 2/3 of its processing time doing integer work. And then the FP32 only core will do just pure FP32. So even though it's the 3080 is rated at 30 teraflops, but it's also rated at 15 teraflops and 15 teraops concurrently, you could say. And you can skew that teraops, the integer number, can go higher or lower. So I think in games, you're going to find that it's going to perform more like in the realm of 20 teraflops plus 10 teraops of int. That's just kind of my assumption, because even though it says 30 teraflops, Nvidia's own benchmark numbers that they released, they do not show it tripling performance of the 2080. So I think that's an interesting architectural change. It's probably for the best, because like you had too much integer capability in a sense on the 20 series, and now they're dialing that back and adding more proportional floating point capability. Oh wait, I did weigh the cards. The 2080 weighed in at 1278 grams, and sorry, 1260 grams. 2080 Super's slightly heavier, 1278. I mean, there's like 5 grams give or take. Then the 2080 Ti and Titan RTX, they're around 1325 grams, and the 3080 weighed 1355 grams. So about 30 grams heavier than a 2080 Ti, and about 100 grams heavier than the 2080.
So we don't know anything yet, and we certainly couldn't say anything if we did about third party 3080 cards. But do you think the fact that do you think one could make a smaller 3080 card?
So there's actually 2 boards that Nvidia has this round. The Founders Edition has the special board that has a cutout and the weird V shape. I don't know that they've released images of that. They talked about it, so I'm pretty sure there's some images out there. Then there's like the reference board that they provide to all the add-in board partners, and I don't know that the add-in board partners can use the Founders Edition board this round, but there's a separate board that I think is going to be your more traditional board design that doesn't have the cutouts or whatever. And so that would actually be a larger board, but different cooling. I would suspect that you're not going to see 3080 cards that are smaller than a 2080. Like they might be the same size at best,
triple slot, maybe a little more compact you could do, but it's 320 watts versus 225 watts on the 2080. So, it's more power just based on their rating. I would expect the cards to have to be pretty big to handle that.
So Andrew asks, why no DisplayPort 2.0? Possible that it could support it later on.
No, they won't support it later on, as far as I know. Like there's no upgrade ability to go from DP 1.4 to DP 2.0. My guess is simply that DisplayPort 2.0 was too high of bandwidth and hard to actually get functioning, maybe. Like the spec was ratified and released last year. So I actually expected this to have DisplayPort 2.0, but it doesn't. And so you get like HDMI 2.1 has a little bit more bandwidth than DisplayPort 1.4. And then like DisplayPort 2.0 is something like 80 gigabits per second, whereas HDMI 2.1 is 48 gigabits per second. So it's a big jump from 48 to 80. And I assume like there were either difficulties or maybe there are no DisplayPort 2.0 displays or monitors currently out there either. Whereas HDMI 2.1 has already seen a lot of uptake in the TV segment. So I think that's kind of their logic behind it. I was disappointed by that. I would expect like we won't see DisplayPort 2.0 now until the next generation architecture, which I don't even know what it's called. So we have Ampere right now, and presumably it will be some scientist that they'll use for the next architecture, but I haven't heard what that scientist's name is going to be.
So I know somebody earlier asked about what kind of power supply you would need for this.
Officially, I think Nvidia says a 650 watt, so here's my thinking on power supplies. Your optimal efficiency is usually running at 50 or 40% to about 60, 70% load on your power supply. So if the graphics card is using 320 watts, and then your CPU is using maybe 100 watts, and the rest of your system is probably using 50 to 100 watts for your memory and storage and fans and whatnot. So add all those together, and you're basically looking at what, like 320 plus 100 plus another 100, so 520 watts minimum. Like that's what I would expect is your power draw peak for a typical PC configured with this card. And you want some overhead for sure. Like I've had 750 watt power supplies that will trip if I put in two 2080 Ti cards, even though I didn't go over 750 watts, just because of like the output of the different voltages and such caused it to trip. So I would say 650 watts, I think, is their minimum recommended. I think you ought to go for 850 watts if you're getting the 3080. I mean, it's 750 watts will be plenty of headroom. 800, 850 gives you that extra so that if you want to do any overclocking, you're in the clear.
Yeah, but given the price of power supplies today, that is a bit of a lift.
Yeah, it's like $150 basically.
Yeah, power supplies have become a lot more expensive lately. We've covered that on Tom's Hardware.
Yeah, I think those shortages will hopefully go away at some point, but COVID has really impacted everything on the manufacturing side. Honestly, I think these cards were supposed to launch back in like May or June probably, and just COVID caused delays and manufacturing delays and all sorts of questions and concerns for shipping, and I think they just pushed it out several months to be on the safe side and maybe to get rid of their inventory of existing cards. But let's see, I can flip these around.
So Jared, did your internet reboot?
It rebooted and it's not connected, sadly. Do you want to see? Here, look, it's my My blinking light of death.
Ugh.
Usually there should be 4 lights on that thing. I can't believe that. Like, internet going down during a live stream. My internet has been really stable too. Like, I don't want to rag on Comcast for having it down all the time, but right when I need it most.
So Brad asks, his MSI Trident X has a 650 watt power supply. Will that work?
It should. Like, you'll be running probably, I would think with your TDPs adding up, you're probably going to be in that 500 to 550 range. So that's what your power supply has to draw from the wall, or now that's what it's pushing out. So then you add in efficiencies, and if your power supply is like 90% efficient, then you're drawing 10% more power than that, which means you might actually draw 600 watts from the wall under full load. But 650 watt, I think you will be okay if it's a quality 650 watt. If you're at like less than 650 watt, I don't know that you're going to be safe running or even trying to run a 3080 unless you're like using a low power CPU that's only rated for 65 watts, maybe.
So that you bring up an interesting question there, which is, at what type of CPU do you need to make? Well, we can't answer that definitively, I guess, because that requires benchmarks. So
you can
maybe
look at I did an i9 9900K versus Ryzen 9 3900X with a 2080 Ti. Actually, I did it with the top 10 GPUs of the previous generations, right? So I had 2080 Ti, 2080 Super, the RX 5700 XT. I think I did a Radeon 7. I can't remember exactly which cards I did, but I ran them all, and I ran them at 1080p, 1440p, and 4K. And the basic result is kind of what you'd expect. At 1080p, your CPU matters more. If you're going after like your 240 frames per second monitor type thing, you would want a faster CPU for sure, which is normally Intel for games right now. But if you are running at 1440p, then your bottleneck moves more toward the toward the graphics card, and at 4K, it's almost totally graphics card limited. So there's I don't have the numbers in front of me because my internet is down, but I want to say that 100K ended up being like just 1 or 2 or 3% faster overall than a 3900X at 4K. And I assume it's probably going to be in that same general ballpark at 4K for these cards. Like, it's such a big jump from 1440p to 4K. But based on their performance, you would also expect 1440p on a 3080 is probably going to have similar CPU bottlenecks as 1080p did on a 2080 Ti, which there are games that will bottleneck on your CPU, is what I'm saying. But I mean, it's your CPU is one of those things. I think you upgrade like probably every 2 or 3 generations of graphics card. You upgrade your CPU. So if you're running anything less than a 6-core CPU, like if you're still on a 7700K or earlier from Intel, I definitely think you need to upgrade your CPU before you upgrade to a 3080. If you're running an AMD Ryzen, you're probably okay. If you're running like the 1st gen or 2nd gen Ryzen 6 cores, like it gets a little more questionable. You'll probably lose some performance for gaming purposes, but don't buy a new Ryzen CPU right now because Zen 3 is coming, right? Like they announced there's going to be a stream on October 8th talking about Zen 3. So, if you're running AMD, I think you wait for the Ryzen 4000 stuff that's coming soon. And if you're running Intel, like if you've got 8th or 9th or 10th gen Intel already, you should be fine.
Yep. So that's the well, we can't I don't think we can even answer this question about, do we think a Ryzen 3900 XT will bottleneck a 3090?
A 3090. So, I mean, I can't answer it because I don't even have a 3090 to test. Like, I can say that. So, based on Nvidia's posted numbers and specs for the 3090, it's supposed to be 20% faster than the 3080, roughly. Honestly, if you're buying a $1,500 3090 graphics card, I don't see why you wouldn't just go whole hog and buy the i9 10900K or at least the i9 10850K, like for gaming purposes. If you're not doing gaming and using it for professional purposes, then maybe the Ryzen CPUs are your better choice because they've got 12 cores. You could even go to the 3950X and get 16 core. I will say, like, Threadripper, when I tested Threadripper last, even the like 3960X and the 3970X, games don't scale well going from 16 to 24 to 32 cores. They simply just they don't know what to do, is what I assume happens. So Threadripper is actually provably slower in the vast majority of games than a 3900X. Even the 12 core AMD chip is their fastest gaming chip right now.
Right. So that's good to know. Someone asked, how much do you predict the 3060 to be?
The cost?
I guess.
I think your 3060 is going to take over your 2060 Super price.
Yep. So
$400. And they might call it the 3060 Super. There might be two. That's the rumor going around, is that there's a 3060 Super or 3060 Ti, which will be your 3070 minus a few cores and maybe with slower memory. And then we might see a 3060 non-Super or non-Ti that goes after that $300 to $350 price.
Someone asks, when is RTX 3090 Ti coming?
The launch date of the 3090 is the 24th, 1 week after the 3080.
But the 3090 Ti.
Oh, the Ti? Your guess is as good as mine. Like, we don't know. So
will there be a 3090 Ti, and will there be enough money in the world to pay for it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think if anything, Nvidia does a Titan card that costs $2,500, but even then, I don't know what they would really do to differentiate it from the 3090, because the 3090 has the GA102 chip and it's got 24 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. So what do you do more than that? They can't do more memory. I mean, they theoretically they could, like they could go to 48 gigabytes, but I don't think that's happening. And they could go to like presumably the 3090 doesn't use the fully enabled GA102 chip, which also is in the 3080. It's also GA102. We don't know for sure how many SMs are available in GA102. Like, I think it's 96 maximum, but it might be less than that. Like the 3090 has 82 SMs, which means that the GA102 has at least 82 SMs, but 82 is a weird number, so it's probably going to be 96, meaning they've disabled 14 of the shader clusters, the streaming multiprocessors. So you could have a 3090 Ti or a 3090 Super or a Titan RTX 3000 or whatever they want to call it, and use the full chip and then charge more.
Yes, that's great. So I think we've reached the end of our broadcast. We've got shown people a lot about this card. Obviously, I want to say to anyone who is interested in the card and or enjoyed this broadcast to hit the like button on YouTube so that you can be alerted when we do more of these broadcasts, because we will do more once we're able to show more about this card. So if you want to be alerted, youtube.com/Tom's Hardware, subscribe, like us, hit hit the button there, and then you will get an
Get the
alert.
bell on.
Yes, then you will get an alert when we're doing these live broadcasts. I also want to point out that every Thursday we have the Tom's Hardware Show that is on at 3 p.m. Eastern, and today we actually have a show where we're talking to the founder of DOS Keyboard, among other things. And on Tuesdays at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, if you like Raspberry Pi, we have the Tom's Hardware Piecast where we talk all about Raspberry Pi. So